So Sean, we talk about the Canadian economy quite a bit, don't we?
Aye, so we do.
So can you tell me the name of the last great Canadian engineering company left?
Gotta be Bombardier, doesn't it?
Exactly, and today we're going to be talking about one of their products. One product not unlike your SUV behind us. It's got all-wheel drive and it seats 4.
Debatable how comfortably.
Yeah, naturally we're talking about the Iltis.
Now, knowing Bombardier, they're far more into planes and trains rather than automobiles, right?
Yeah, you're totally right, because this is actually a vehicle licensed built by Bombardier. Originally, the Iltis was designed in the late 1970s by Volkswagen for the Bundeswehr after a failed European Jeep project. The objective of the vehicle was to be cheap, light, and capable off-road.
Not unlike another cheap, light, capable off-road vehicle Volkswagen made some 40 years earlier.
Exactly. Now, Sean, one of the things that differs between the Iltis and your Audi behind us is the engine. Obviously, you probably have something in the hundreds of horsepower. The Iltis only has 75. And to help us talk about the mechanical bits of the vehicle and driving it, we've got the assistant curator of the Ontario Regiment Museum, Sam. How are you doing?
Good to see you, Johan. You as well, Sean.
So Sam, can you explain to us how to pop open the hood and what's underneath?
Sure can. Can you please get that latch for me?
Yep.
I'll get this one. And up we go. And there's that standing rod. And there we are. So this big black piece in the center is that inline 4-cylinder 75 horsepower engine that you were talking about earlier. So if you notice on the cap right here on the front plate of the engine and on some other interior components as well, you'll see that both the Volkswagen and the Audi logos are visible on them.
And that's actually an important point, because Audi actually designed the Iltis for Volkswagen because Volkswagen owns Audi. And the all-wheel drive drivetrain for the Iltis later became the Audi Quattro system, which is still used in vehicles today. In fact, a modified version of the Iltis later went on to win the Dakar Rally.
Very cool. So this big silver piece here is the alternator, which is connected to the engine by some rubber belts. And what that does is creates an electric current that will charge the battery while the vehicle is running. Over here is a coolant reservoir that feeds both the radiator up here and keeps the engine cool. On this side here, there's a carburetor, which feeds the fuel-air mixture to the engine to help the engine run. And this big aquamarine box is an air system that feeds the blower for the windshield up here and the air circulation systems throughout the rest of the vehicle.
Well, I guess it's time to close the hood and go for a spin.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so before we head off, there's actually a very differentiating feature that the Iltis has, which most other Audis and probably most other normal road cars do not have. And that is a very unique ignition system. So here we are at the cab, and you will notice that there is no key slot. Sam, can you tell us more about why?
Well, most military vehicles don't actually have a key ignition system because, in a way, that makes them a little easier to steal. So what we have instead, find it up under here, is this hex key, which we've modified with a wing nut for easier turning, that is used to turn on the master power circuit in the vehicle. So once you stick this into its slot and turn it on, that allows you to get electricity through the vehicle, but does not allow you to turn it on unless you know how. And even then, there's still other redundancies to stop people from just starting it once that's in and going away on their own joyrides.
All right, so can you show us how to turn it on now?
Sure can. Let's climb in here and do this.
Now, as you guys can see, because this is an off-road vehicle, it's got a really high ride height, which for short people like me makes it really hard to climb on. Okay, so before we set off, can you tell us a bit about the controls, Sam?
Sure can. So, in addition to the master power switch, which was located right here underneath the left side of the dash, There is a control box for all your lights right here, including your headlights, tail lights, and panel lights. There's an ignition switch right here. There is a choke right to the right of it. On the steering column behind the steering wheel, there is a lever for your windshield wipers, your turn signals, and on the center here, you've got a combination gauge of a speedometer, a fuel gauge, an odometer, and a bunch of different warning lights, including your turn signal lights. So immediately to the right of that, you've got a knob and two switches for fans, blowers, and your hazard lights. You've got an oil pressure gauge, an engine compartment temperature gauge, a battery voltage indicator to make sure you're not draining or overcharging your battery, and warning lights for your parking brake, differential lock, and all-wheel drive. And on the subject of the latter two, the differential lock lever is down here, and you engage and disengage it by pulling it up or pushing it down. The all-wheel drive lever is right next to it and operates the exact same way. And of course there's your gear shift in the middle with this sleeve here that you pull up to be able to get it into reverse or your cross-country gear. And last but not least, you've got your parking brake lever in the center here between the two seats.
Okay, so can you show us how to turn it on?
All right, so what we do to start the vehicle.
And I guess we better get our seatbelts on first, shouldn't we?
Yes, that's just a good idea. Okay, so all buckled in, you make sure your master power switch is turned on and your switch is locked into place. You'll want to pull the choke out slightly to allow some gas to flow more freely into the engine. You make sure you're in neutral, of course. Make sure your parking brake is on so you don't just take off out of nowhere. Flick your ignition switch on. Your gauges should be indicating and you should be hearing a reassuring whirring sound. And then, once you're ready, just press this red button right here, and there you go. And to actually get moving then, you'll want to, of course, take off the parking brake, just set her into gear. That should be gear 1 right there. Just make doubly sure of that. There we go. Apply a slight bit of gas, let off the clutch slowly, and off we go.
So one of the uses of the Iltis in both the Bundeswehr and the Canadian Forces was as a light reconnaissance vehicle. Let's pretend that the aircraft control towers behind us are actually East German guard towers and make sure the East Germans aren't up to anything weird. Okay, it looks pretty good to me. Let's head off, Sam.
The Iltis was used in a variety of other roles, including as a medical evacuation vehicle, and even though there's not much room in the back, the Germans also mounted a Milan 1 anti-tank guided missile system in there. With its maximum speed of over 80 kilometers per hour, good off-road capability, and low profile, the Iltis was well suited for its reconnaissance and anti-tank roles. With the Canadian Forces, it has served us between the late years of the 1980s up till the early years of Afghanistan. Overall, the Iltis has been a great vehicle for the Canadians and is still widely available on the civilian market as surplus vehicles. Thanks for watching this video, and thanks to the Ontario Regiment Museum for supporting us through it. If you want to donate to them, there is a link in the description below. Sorry about that. And if you come by next week, you will be able to see that. As you guys might have heard in the distance, the thunder and rain is approaching, so we are off. Thanks.